Today we have Gabe Monroy on the podcast. He is just a little bit of background about him. So he is 33 years old. He used to be a firefighter and started wholesaling. He's got quite a few rentals right now, and is just crushing it in business more or less. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate you asking me to be on here.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll get started. So what first question, what got you into real estate?
That's a really good question. I wanted more freedom for my family, like most people do. I got into being a firefighter because I knew that being a firefighter would give me days off and it'd give me time to possibly work a second job. So I became a firefighter, and on my days off I started installing sprinkler systems and doing a little landscaping work, and it allowed time for my wife to be able to stay at home and be with our kids, and that was my main goal. That's how my mom raised us, and I kind of wanted her to be able to do the same. Well, I quickly found out that you can kind of work your life away between being a firefighter, and then if things go wrong during your shift and you actually have to fight a big fire, you're too tired to wake up the next day and work that second job, and so sometimes it just doesn't always work out how you want it to. Absolutely loved it. The adrenaline rush was awesome. Great group of people. The camaraderie was awesome. But in the end, I realized that I wanted more time and I wanted to do less work. And so I'm like, well, that seems impossible, but what could possibly be out there? So like most people on every podcast you hear, they read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that was literally the first book I read. Actually, I was at the fire station. I remember sitting at the computer and I was like, what's something else I can do? Well, I knew real estate was cool and it sounds sexy, so I just Googled best real estate books, and every single website came up with Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I got on Amazon, ordered it, read it while I was at the fire station, and just like everyone says, it really changed my perspective on how to live my life and how to manage my money, and it really intrigued me to motivate me to start going towards real estate even more. So then it quickly transitioned from me doing landscaping on the side to trying to figure out how I could buy a house or do a rehab or do something like that on my days off, and figure out how to find a good deal. So that's kind of how it transitioned.
And how long did you do that for? How long did you do one job and then the other job on your days off?
Yeah, so I was a firefighter for about 5 years, and then this happened a couple years into it. So as far as juggling being a firefighter before I became an investor, I'd say those two, I was juggling both of those two for probably about 2 years.
Okay. Pretty long while then.
Yeah, that is a good amount of time.
Yeah, well, it took me long enough, but I eventually joined a mentorship program and thought I was going to give them a couple months for me to quit my job. I wanted to go into it slowly and not just quit immediately, but turns out that firefighters are high risk and have high insurance. So once they knew that I had the intentions of quitting, they're like, well, if you got hurt and we already know you're going to quit, this could cost us possibly $1 million through the course of time, medical bills or possibly medical leave. So we're like, yeah, a couple months sounds great for you, but I think we'll let you go in about 2 weeks since that's your goal.
Oh my God.
I wasn't ready for that, but at this point, like I said, I had been doing it for a couple of years, and so I knew, I was like, well, you know what, I can make this work, I can do it. So
Wow.
it was time to get serious.
Gotta get your butt in gear.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no playtime then after that. So
No.
hey, sexy is freaking out.
Yep. All of a sudden things weren't looking very sexy.
Oh my gosh. So back up a little. So you joined the mentorship program. So that was Wholesaling Inc., right?
Yep.
Okay.
Wholesaling Inc. That was when Tom Kroll was still running the show, and Cody Hoffine was just in it for a year or so. So kind of one of their first students. I think they had kind of been in it about a year, but That's one of the things that I would definitely suggest if you're getting into real estate. I would suggest finding a mentor quickly. And that's one thing I probably took too long to do. It helped get me on track and helped give me quicker success.
Yeah, and that's actually how we met. You know, through the wholesaling program, and kind of knew each other before that. But that's how we kind of got connected.
Yeah.
More or less.
Right.
But there's a lot of power within mentorship programs and just not reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, for sure. If I just think if you're getting interested in real estate, there's so many different aspects, whether it's rentals or wholesaling or flips. Pick one, figure out what you're interested in, and then find someone specific that can really help you focus on that, and then just take action as quickly as possible. And that's huge advice that I would give if I were looking back. Just take action as quickly as possible. I learned from Tom Kroll, progress, not perfection, and that's still how I live my life. Take the first step. Everyone knows a baby has to crawl before it walks and runs, and it's the same thing in business. Take that first step and fall down, fail forward, fall down, and learn from your mistakes. But definitely don't wait to take that first step. Just take it as quickly as possible.
You were the reason why I actually got into it, because I heard you on Tom Kroll's podcast.
Oh, really?
And that was like 3 years ago, and I'm like, maybe I should start doing it. The first podcast was probably like 5 or 6 years ago, and I remember sitting there thinking, maybe I should get into this. That's when I bought my first duplex.
That's awesome.
And then I heard you a couple more times on that podcast, and I was like, man, he's killing it. So,
Yeah.
and then I just kept wanting to get into it even more and more, and buy more and more properties. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Well, I'm by no means killing it, but still got
he's being
still got a long
Yeah, really.
still got a long ways to go. My long-term goals are to acquire more rentals. Right now, as you guys know, we operate a wholesaling business here in Kansas City. Got a great team of guys here that are able to help. We all move in the same direction, same goal in mind. We're able to help sellers and serve them, and but my goal at long term is to acquire more rentals. It doesn't matter what size, single family, small apartments, but end goal is to slowly move into the larger stuff. And in the very end, what I foresee in the future is possibly being a lender of some sort of private money lender, because in my opinion, that's the best form of passive cash flow. So
You don't gotta do anything except
Right.
get your money out and get some more money back.
right, yeah.
Let everybody else do the work.
exactly, yeah,
That's the way to make money.
yeah.
Well, so I know you touched on it a little bit on feeling your way forward and whatnot earlier. So what do you think that your biggest failure is?
My biggest failure financially happened last year, or 2 years ago, maybe. But it was right when COVID started. We had invested in a commercial building that we thought was really going to crush it. And then COVID hit, and we didn't really know what was hitting at the time because it was right when it started. But it was a small town, it was downtown Independence, and businesses were getting shut down, and nobody was going to buy commercial, and nobody wanted anything to do with commercial. And COVID was making a huge impact in society, as everyone knows. So it was not a good buy, and it was high in taxes. It was a commercial building, large building, and it was costing me a lot of money. It was very painful. Then winter hit, pipes froze, they broke everywhere. It just seemed like one catastrophe happened after another, and then the taxes had to get paid, and it wasn't selling like I thought it was going to. And then we thought about possibly doing something with it, like creating some rental units inside of it, but it was getting so painful that I turned into a motivated my seller and needed to cut my losses. So that was the first and only deal that I've actually lost fairly significant money on, but it didn't deter me. It was failing forward. It was something different. We don't do a lot of that. It didn't teach me necessarily not to buy commercial. I learned a lot of lessons from that, but it did teach me to always be aware of what's going on in, I guess, the world around you. If the market takes a dip, you just need to be ready for that and make shifts. It doesn't mean that you should stop. So
Right. Well, and it was vacant too at the
Yeah.
time.
So
So,
that was the old barber shop or something like that, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
it was a salon.
and honestly, nobody could have expected that.
COVID.
Yeah, you say, who would have guessed if you would have said the world would have been shut down,
Right.
literally shut down.
Yeah, it was bad luck for sure.
I mean, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah,
It's kind of unfortunate, but it happens, you know.
yeah.
So that's your biggest failure in your mind, but do you have a crazy, like one of your top craziest stories you have? Funniest, craziest?
You know, we've had a lot of crazy stories between going to vacant houses and seeing squatters there that, you know, aren't supposed to be there, that maybe sellers were out of state and they didn't know about. But, you know, I think one crazy story, just kind of funny, that comes to mind. I had this house I thought was going to be a great deal. I was still doing all the acquisitions myself at the time. Had a lot of follow-ups with the seller who was out of state. I think they were in California. Seemed like a really great deal. At the time, they weren't quite ready to sell, so several months went by, follow-up went by, and finally agreed on a price. Finally came time that they were ready to sell, so I'm like, all right, this is awesome. Signed the contract. Basically, it was almost going to be a sight unseen deal because it was just so good. Decided, well, let's just drive by real quick and see this house, just to make sure everything checks out. Well, turns out the house wasn't there. It was on the city's demo list, and they had demoed it recently, and the seller didn't even know that had happened. They weren't trying to take advantage of me, but they literally had no idea. They knew it was a dangerous building. They knew they needed to sell it, but they didn't know that it had already got demoed. So there was no house there. There was a vacant lot.
This is a lot.
Vacant lot. So that always comes to mind when I think of crazy stories. So definitely, if you're doing stuff virtual, and this was in my own town, but I thought, you know, I can do stuff virtual in my own town too. You know, we don't always have to see
Gotta go look
see
at
it,
it.
but definitely have someone check to make sure the house is always there.
Oh my God. That's funny. That's a good one right there.
Yeah,
Well, I'm glad you didn't buy it.
Yeah, that's no joke.
yeah,
Start mowing the grass, overpay for a vacant lot. I mean,
oh man,
that ain't no good.
yeah.
I could have turned it into a lot bigger nightmare than what had happened. So.
Yeah, it absolutely could have. So luckily for good due diligence of just taking the simple action of driving by, it saved me a lot of problems. But that's happened on not such quite a large scale. That's happened in other times where the house has been in worse shape than the seller thought if they were out of town and maybe squatters destroyed the house. But this is definitely by far the craziest out of all of them. So.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So next question: what are you working on currently?
You know, currently I'm working on building my leadership skills. I've got to a great place in my life where I have built a small company that is able to function without me being entirely in it. And my goal is to just bring good leadership, good quality, motivation, and continued education for my team. And my goal is that if everyone wins, and if I'm the only one winning, then I'm building nothing of any worth of value. So I'm just really working on being a leader, growing the company, and growing the wealth of my teammates around me, so that we can all win, and so that we can all be blessings to those around us. So.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. What kind of struggles have you, like, growing to be a better leader? What kind of struggles or advice would you give somebody?
I'd say the biggest struggle is just not believing in myself and being a leader. So I just never viewed myself that way, and as I've grown my team, it's forced me to be in that role. I gave it some resistance at first until I realized no one's going to do the job but me, so I just got to buck up and do it, and then I got to learn how to be the best leader I can. So I guess it's just believing in yourself has been the biggest resistance.
And what would you tell your younger self, your 20-year-old self? I know you touched on it a couple times in different ways, but if you could go back in time, what would you tell yourself to get yourself where you're at now or progress further?
Yeah, to sum up a couple things I said is get a mentor and take action quickly. And what's funny is my dad's boss gave me, back when I was 20 and when CDs were still a thing,
CDs.
he gave me a whole
CDs.
he gave me a whole pack of CDs of some real estate guru. I don't even know who it was. He's like, hey, tell your son to listen to this stuff, because if I was 20, this is what I would be doing. And this is coming from a 40 plus year old man.
Yeah.
And I was 20, so I had the opportunity. But it's so hard to just know what you don't know, obviously.
You're
It
not,
sounds
you're
silly,
not
but-
looking for that opportunity at that
Yeah,
time.
I mean,
so
I
you
was
didn't see
thinking
it,
about
yeah.
college. I was thinking about chasing girls, you know, like
Yeah.
if I could be a little bit more mature and think about what really matters in life, and I could have taken that more seriously, that was handed right to me in that moment, it would have been good to take it more seriously and actually at least start taking some action and not waiting so long. So,
It's pretty much what I would tell my younger self too, because I waited a lot longer than you did. So
yeah.
Start senior.
yeah, well, yeah.
The younger you start, I mean,
Yeah, I think all the people in real estate would agree with that and would say the same thing. So I've always asked myself, how can I got 3 girls, and I've always asked myself, as they get older, how can I instill in their brains and their minds this importance so that they can see the value much sooner and recognize how to be more mature. Try to be creative and make it seem fun for them so that they actually know the value of it. So
yeah. Whenever I go to like meetups and groups and whatnot, like I tell people my age, you know, yeah, I'm 22 years old. And they're like, what? They're like almost like a double take.
yeah,
They're like, you have no idea how lucky you are to be like doing what you're doing. And I'm like, honestly, I don't. You know, I mean, I've had 65-year-old men tell me that. Like, you are literally. I wish I was in your position. You know, like even if you don't, like time, that's the only thing that you can't get more of.
that's true. Absolutely. So don't waste any of it. You're 22, recognize it and make the most of it. So
Yeah.
kudos to you for sure.
But at the same token, you're still really, really young. You know, you're 33 years old. You still have another lifetime. You got 30 more years to live. 40 years old, whatever. 40 more years.
And that's why I think about not what I could have done and dwell too much on that, but just move forward from what I got, because that's all we can do. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What kind of advice would you give somebody? So let's say they're like just starting out, don't know anything about it. What advice would you give somebody?
You know, the best advice is, if you don't know anything about it but it interests you, you know, definitely start educating yourself and figure out what aspect you want, what interests you, because like we talked about, there are a lot of different things you can get into in real estate. You can be a realtor, you can be a broker, you can be a flipper or landlord, and someday you might want to be all those, but you obviously have to start with one thing. So what interests you, but not only what interests you, what's going to make the biggest impact in your life right now and get you where you want to be. And ultimately it comes down to your why. So why do you want that? What's it gonna give you? If you're asking for freedom, then what's gonna get you that freedom quicker? If it's rental properties, then maybe that's where you want to start. So then find that mentor that is an expert at rental properties and start there. My experience has showed me that no matter where you start, you're going to end up doing a lot of different things in real estate. It's never going to be just one thing, but you do need to spend a considerable amount of time focusing on one thing so that you understand it well enough you can take efficient action to actually start implementing and making it work before you move on to the next thing.
Just start.
Yep, just start. Just start.
Even if it's in the wrong direction, then you correct your course along the way.
It's part of failing forward.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean what we talked about earlier, just failing your way forward.
Yep.
Yep. Just get started, and if you find out it's not the right one, then you can always switch gears. But don't fall into the analysis paralysis mode.
A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
A lot of people. I mean, I don't know about you, but I did that whenever I first started. I would think about having a conversation with somebody for
You talk yourself out.
30 minutes
Out of
before I would
everything.
even click click dial on the
Yep.
phone. Just scared.
Yeah. I was scared my first deal. I almost backed out of it like literally the day of closing. I didn't do it, but I was freaking out. But yeah. So knowing now what you know, where would you point like a new person, like a book that you have that's a favorite book of yours? Where would you point them in the direction to learn about something like this?
Ooh, that's a tough question. There's a lot of great books out there. For a new person,
Mm-hmm.
I would. There's a book called The One Thing, and the reason why I like that book is it kind of sums up what I talked about. It talks about picking something and focusing on it, and not having that squirrel or shiny object syndrome where you're always looking from side to side saying, oh, that looks good, oh, that looks good, or maybe I should try that or try that. You really need to focus. Whatever you start doing, you got to focus on that until you've perfected it enough where you feel comfortable moving on to something else. So The One Thing is good, but I have to give a second book that comes to mind. My whole philosophy is serving others. If we don't provide value to others, whether it be customers,
Mm-hmm.
mentors, our teammates, our spouse, if we aren't providing some sort of value, we're not building quality relationships, and everything hinges on quality relationships in this world. And the big book that comes to mind, it's not even a big book, but it's big in my mind. It's what did I write down?
Go Giver.
The Go Giver. The Go Giver is a great book. Actually, the person who introduced it to me was Brent Daniels. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you've heard of Brent Daniels, but he used to always tell me he read it at least once a week, and I was like, well, that's
Once
crazy.
a week?
Yeah, once a week.
It's not that small of a book either.
Yeah. But I'm like, okay, it must be an important book. So I read that book, and basically the book just tells you the importance, it teaches you the importance of what it means to be a giver, which is serving others. It also teaches you something that you don't really, most people don't think about it. It teaches you the importance of not only giving, but to be a good giver, you have to know how to actually receive in return. It has to go both ways. So I would highly recommend The One Thing for staying focused, and The Go Giver to keep you in the right mindset to grow those relationships you need.
And that's by Gary Keller, right? Pretty sure. The One Thing is Gary Keller. I'm not quite sure, but
I can't remember, honestly.
yeah, somebody. Probably put it in the show notes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably a good idea. Because I'm actually in the process of reading The Go Giver right now.
Cool.
So, and then I'm gonna read that book that you actually let me borrow. So,
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap things up, so what are your plans for the future?
My plans for the future is to be able to get to a happy place where we can have free time and spend with my family, be able to take time off whenever I want to. But I've realized that I don't want to be like fully retired to how most people think of being fully retired.
On the beach?
Yeah, most people think, well, I want to retire, I want to do nothing the rest of my life because I've worked so hard, and I've realized that doing nothing is actually pretty boring, and it's really important that no matter how old we get, we continue to develop our brains and be active and do things. And so I'm always going to continue to do something, and like I said in the beginning, it probably will end up being some sort of private money lender where I can at least stay active in some way. So that's the long-term goal.
yeah, you can do that anywhere across the globe too, which
Right.
would be the awesome thing about it. So,
Yeah,
travel with you, your kids, and wife, and it'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like you said the other day. So what was it? If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. Everybody thinks you can coast along, something like that.
Yeah, one thing that someone taught me that I believe to be true 100% is if you're not moving, if you're not climbing that hill to get to a higher level, if you're not moving forward, moving up, climbing, and you think that you're just coasting in your business, you're actually going backwards. You always have to either be making progress or you're going backwards. And I would just consider giving that some thought, because some people think it's possible to coast, and I would challenge you to say no, that's not true.
Yeah, momentum is a huge thing, honestly. If you don't
Yeah.
keep that momentum going, you're not really going anywhere.
Right.
Like
That's very true.
The steam engine.
Yeah.
It takes a long time for it
Exactly.
to start get going.
Yeah.
So what?
I think we've asked pretty much most of our questions of you.
Yeah, I think so.
And you re-answered a couple of them in different ways. And definitely appreciate coming out here. Do you have anything that you'd actually want to tell people that are listening, or?
Yeah, one last piece of advice or
Yeah.
anything that you want to
Get out there and start educating yourself if you haven't, and take action. Imperfect action, progress, not perfection. Fail forward. You could say it 100 different ways, but
Mhm.
just start doing. That's I couldn't stress that enough. If I were to leave you with one thing, that's what it would be.
Yeah.
Take action now, and it doesn't matter if it's perfect. So I really appreciate you guys having me. It was great to
Absolutely.
talk with you guys
Yeah.
about this, and I hope that somebody listening can get some value out of this, and that maybe help them. And we're always an open book. We're here local in Kansas City, so if anyone needs to reach out,
If anybody wants
Yeah,
to get
exactly,
a hold of
that's what
you,
I was about
how can they?
they can find me on Facebook, or we can leave my email in the notes. I'm also on Bigger Pockets. You can message me there. So a lot of different ways.
And how do you spell your name so people can look you up on Facebook?
Yeah, it's
Bigger Pockets?
Gabe, Gabe. Maybe Facebook has Gabriel, Gabriel.
Mhm.
Last name Monroy, Monroy.
Okay. Cool. So message him, or you can always try to message one of us and we can get in touch with him as well for you. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys.
Well, awesome. Thanks so much.